Welcome to the Barefoot Hut podcast. In this new episode, we want to introduce Adam, our chef cook. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, Geraldine. Hi, everybody.
And well, like with the others, we would like to know more about you, where you're coming from, anything about your life that you want to share, your experience, and how you came to become a chef, and what you like about it, and yeah, anything you want to share.
Okay. So first of all, my name is Adam Barsaki. I'm from Hungary, and being a chef or working as a chef is my second degree. Lots of people do not know, but originally I'm a holder of a degree in biochemical engineering. And after a few years in a medical field, I felt like I need to change something in my career, and I really wanted to do something I enjoy. So in the meantime, I got a second degree. I went to culinary school, and I got the official degree to be a chef. So that's how I became a chef. And since then, I'm cooking completely vegan. Either when I was cooking in restaurants or other places, it was always vegan. And yeah, just like there.
Yes. And so, what made you want to change your career?
I
Or like you said, like you didn't really connect right to that kind of career, but
yeah.
what made you choose cooking? Chef?
It was a recommendation. Some people who already tried my
Ah,
food before
that's good.
becoming a chef, they are like, "Oh, you should do that for a living." So I don't know. They were just talking to me. So I've heard it so many times. I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to try
That's
it.
right.
And after I got my certificate, I was still not working as a chef. I was just traveling around the world, and my plan was to be as close to nature as possible. And that's the reason I started volunteering in animal sanctuaries. I was actually volunteering here in Spain, not so far from here in a sanctuary, because I really wanted to be just closer to nature. And that was the point, I think, where I got this idea that I'm going to combine these two. So I already have a chef degree, and I would like to be as close to nature as possible. So that's why I chose to work in places that are more immersed in nature. And I was not really focusing on restaurants and hotels where most of the chefs are working. I had my time in restaurants and in the hotel industry as well, but my main target is to be as close to nature as possible. And I think this is this is quite close to it.
Oh, it's not that close to like a real animal sanctuary experience in.
Yeah, I was in South Africa. In South Africa, I was working as a chef in a monkey sanctuary. That was a really remote place. It was in the middle of the bush, in the middle of the savannah. Yes, that was one of the most extreme experiences of my life. It was completely off-grid, so I do not have a problem with electricity issues or water issues or groceries in really intense conditions. So
Yeah, you're flexible, right? And
yeah,
that's something we discussed before you joined, right? That we need some flexibility, although we're not totally off grid, but we do have some sometimes. That's in electricity or last minute groceries and stuff. But I think compared to that, I guess it's
we had solar panels there as well.
but it's maybe not as complicated here and there to do that. But you want to like share a bit more in detail about all your experience, how you started, and
I started with yeah. I started working as a chef in a completely vegan, and actually not just a vegan, but vegan and gluten-free restaurant. And I don't know if people who are listening to this podcast know, but Barefoot Heart is completely gluten-free as well. Not just vegan, but gluten-free and sugar-free. Uh,
okay.
and organic, yeah. So the first restaurant I was working on was completely gluten-free. I was working there for a year. It was a really colorful and nice restaurant in the middle of Budapest. And after that, I spent another year, full year in South Africa, which was, again, the monkey sanctuary was completely vegan. Even how we fed the monkeys they were on plant-based diet. That's their natural diet.
Yes.
So of course, we didn't stop them eating insects and
Yes, exactly.
things, but when we were feeding the monkeys, that's the question usually people ask me a lot. That during the sanctuary, were you cooking for the monkeys? But no, I was cooking for the staff and the collectors over there. Sometimes when we were short on stuff, I was helping with the food preparation for the monkeys.
That
But it
was a lot
basically
of food and veggie chopping.
heaps, like hundreds of wheelbarrows. Yeah.
Wow. How many monkeys were there?
500 monkeys who belong to this or who were under our care, and another 100 who were just wild, but they just saw the opportunity that we are cutting fruit for the sanctuary monkeys, so they started living there.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's a huge sanctuary.
Yes, it was a really, really big sanctuary. And after South Africa, I was working 2 years in Portugal in a surf camp, so really close to nature again, but now not in the middle of nowhere, but really close to the sea or between the mountains and sea. And that place was not vegan, but when they hired me, I told them that I'm only going to vegan food there. So if they would like to serve other dishes, they need to hire another chef who's going to prepare those. And even though I'm not vegan, I always cook vegan either. Or in every place I was working at, I cooked vegan because I like challenges. It's even challenging for me. What can I create from these ingredients? And I really like showing people how colorful it can be to eat a completely plant-based diet. And most people who were working in the sanctuary or who came to the surf camp as guests, they were not vegan. But when they just saw what they can actually have without meat, it just completely impressed.
Yeah, you're not
And
missing anything.
no.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I wanted to mention, that in South Africa, I was cooking for really hardworking people who were on the field from early morning until late night. In the surf camp, I was cooking for people who spent the day in the ocean. So I really needed to take care of their proper nutrition and protein intake and cook a really colorful variety for them.
To make them feel full and satisfied and
Yes.
so yeah, it's a good challenge.
Yes. Yes. And in between the 2 years in Portugal, I just visited Hungary again, and I spent a few months in another completely vegan restaurant, uh, which was an a la carte restaurant again in the middle of Budapest. It was a very nice place. I visited that restaurant every time, even before then.
Why did you decide to come to Spain?
I think my first connection with Spain was when I was volunteering 4 years ago. I spent I spent 3 months in Spain 4 years ago, around the same time between May and August, not so far from here, between Valencia and Alicante. I really like the language, so that was enough. I really like the environment, I like the nature, the proximity of the sea. So, and I really would like to. Yeah, yeah. I want it. Yeah.
That's cool. And yeah, about that sanctuary in well, close to Valencia, right? Can you tell a bit more because I find it fascinating.
Yeah, it's called Ape Primadomus. They have two sanctuaries. Originally, it's a Dutch sanctuary. They have another sanctuary here in Vienna, that's or close to Vienna, between Alicante and Valencia, and they are mainly focusing on primates and big cats. Yeah. So when I was volunteering there, we had lots of Barbary macaques, mostly from illegal trafficking or previously kept as pets. There were lots of circus animals like chimpanzees, tigers, and lions, and they ended up in these sanctuaries. They are really just sanctuaries, so their goal is not to keep them there, but to rehabilitate the animals. If it's possible, release them in the wild. Unfortunately, in most cases, it's not possible. But I know that, for example, for Barbary macaques, they have a program where they reach them back to the wilderness in Morocco.
Nice. So you're an animal lover as well.
Indeed.
To work in such an environment where they really take care and try to rescue those animals, and it's a lot of work,
Yes.
hard work. Help animals, especially animals that are usually in bad condition, in bad shape, health. So it's yeah, I definitely want to go and visit that.
Yeah, I can recommend it to anybody, everybody.
And you work cooking there as well?
No,
No, there was just
no. I think I already had my chef degree, but I was I was still in between this career switch. So I was just figuring out lots of things. So that's why I took a sabbatical
Okay.
in my previous workplace, and I started volunteering. And just switch off and just think about stuff. And then I just completely changed that. Since then, I'm on the path.
And yeah, I'm curious about why did you choose well, you already said a little bit, but still I'm curious. Why did you choose to go vegan if you're not vegan? Like why?
Being vegetarian was not so far for me because my father is vegetarian for more than 20 years, 25 years so far. So at home, we always had either a vegan or vegetarian option or the whole food or the whole meal was vegan or
So you
vegetarian.
go
So it was,
already use that.
yeah, for me, it was not new to eat without meat or without dairy. And it was really fortunate that my whole family just accommodated my father. So even my grandparents were cooking my great grandparents were.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
I know lots of people are struggling with this issue, no matter vegan or vegetarian, but they visit like older family members, and it's just such a tradition to eat meat dishes. But for me, it was different. So I always knew there's another way. It just happened.
Especially maybe I'm wrong, but in Hungary it's quite meat based.
Yes.
Like I know Poland, I don't know Hungary, and I know there it's pretty much meat based. So it's even a bigger thing there to have such a case like you're saying, where your father is vegetarian and the whole family supports that, and
Yeah, but this is the other thing how it started for me. I really like traveling. I traveled around lots of countries, and I really like I really enjoy the culinary aspect of traveling. And most I think I turned vegetarian more than 10 years ago now. So during most of my travels, I was not eating. So I was looking for traditional dishes without meat, which were like usually completely meat. And it was possible everywhere because if we just take a look at every nation's cuisine, the staple dishes are always going to be completely. Like decades ago, meat was really expensive, and most poor people were eating completely meat, like from the field, what they could afford. So it just it's just the world that changed around us, and I think it's not necessary, but we are just keep forgetting about those really old days and staple. everywhere in the world. There are vegan dishes. Even when I was in South Africa, South Africa is super big. They eat every single. They have lots of animals. They have all the animals we can imagine, and they eat all. And yeah, in that country, the staple dishes that the locals are eating are complete because that's what they can afford, like on a daily basis. And it's really nice to see something completely new. I've seen new ingredients, like new plants and herbs and vegetables I never heard about.
You discovered and cooked with them and tried them.
Yes, I wouldn't say I loved all, but yeah, I tried them. My One of my favorite really local dishes in South Africa. I was living in a town called Salis. South Africa is huge, so every part of South Africa has different cuisine. I was like from 6 hours drive from Johannesburg, and in that region they had a traditional dish which was a bean stew with peanut. It was just beans and peanuts cooked together. The only spice or flavor they used was salt. That's it. And when I heard it from a local woman and I've seen it in a cooking book, I was a little bit suspicious. But
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I need to try. I didn't I didn't really have high hopes. And it was amazing. It was so simple. It was just beans, peanuts cooked in water, like it reached this stew consistency with a little bit of salt. It was a really rich, heavy, earthy stew. It was honestly amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems so simple, but sometimes the simplest foods are amazing, and it's right that a lot of staple foods and main dishes in a lot of countries are like that. That's simple, and I realize as well, because of what you're just sharing, that beans, for example, are something quite used. It reminds me of a dish when I lived in Egypt. In Egypt, there is also a main dish that they eat even in morning, actually called foo, and it's made of beans and a lot of spices though in that case. But yeah, they had like several dishes as well like this, um, made with a lot of beans and or vegetable or things like that. Yeah, and true. And then they kind of add if they can the meat to that, and it's true, especially in those countries where it's not that affordable. And so yeah, it's true that we are shifting more and more away from that, and especially in Europe or in modern countries. But it's a nice recording. Or
But that's how I got really vegan. Another like interesting fact that when I was doing the school, I was already vegetarian, but the school was classic, a classic cooking school. So I needed to work with this. I was just not tasting my own food.
okay,
Yeah, when it was not all meat dishes, but like I would say like 80% some kind of even like chicken or
wow,
something like that. So even on my exam, I asked my my fellow students to try to taste my food. Yeah,
this is like a additional challenge to the already hard thing to pass such exam.
but I passed it really good, so I don't know.
I mean, it again reminds me from me because I used to come from the hospitality industry, so we had like, cooking was a big part of it. I was not vegan at that point, but I've always been like an animal lover. So for me, like, and when you learn cooking in those places, like I don't know how it was for you, but in our case, you're not just having all the nice ingredients and you just cook them. Like we had the whole, maybe not the whole animal. Well, in case of chicken, yes, but you have to, or the whole fish, and you have to remove all the organs and the bones and stuff. So for me, even not as a vegan, but then it was like, oh my god, it's horrible. And my brothers always made fun of me, like, you're never gonna manage to do that at school because you're not gonna be able to. you know, to catch a
Yeah.
dead animal. But yeah, yeah, it is.
Actually, that's another thing, that being an animal lover. I was always a big animal lover, and that's one thing that moved me to this direction, not to eat meat. So when I think since the age of like 3 in kindergarten, when somebody just asked me, what will I be when I'm going to be an adult? My answer was, I'm going to be a zoologist.
Really?
Yes. And I think I didn't really change my mind until age of 16. But so I was always focusing on a biology related field, and that's how I became a biochemical engineer. It's a really long and complicated story, but after like not reaching satisfaction in that field, that's why I started volunteering with them. Because I even considered taking the zoology course. My my bachelor's degree is a good input for zoology masters. So I was like, maybe I'm going to be a zoologist. And just working on the field with animals as a volunteer, I just realized that I'm going to just leave it for the professionals.
I don't know.
Yeah, they do not need another person. But I really wanted to stay close to them.
Yeah.
If not working straight with animals or like hands-on with animals, like around.
Hopefully, in a not so long or far away future, we'll have our own little sanctuary. Well, it's not going to be big cats and wildlife, but yeah, we got you goats, a few pigs.
I can't.
Yeah, that would be so cool. And yeah, another aspect that maybe you want to share about. I know you like sports. You're always doing some kind of sports around here. So, what's your point of view or lifestyle around that? Like, I feel like health in general is important.
Like nutrition and vegan lifestyle. Uh, when I turned vegetarian and I just started leaving more and more things out of my diet, I was actually observing how my body is reacting to the changes, and I didn't. Probably it's everybody's everybody's body is going to react in a different way. I did medical checkups twice a year, maybe, like blood test. I measured my weight quite often, and there was literally no significant change. So everything, every single level was healthy for me. So, just switching from an omnivorous diet to herbivore diet was it didn't affect my performance or my health. So I I was always doing some kind of sport. So I I still do that. I mostly do body weight workout. So at home, I just calisthenics park, and here, as you or as the kids might have seen before, I'm carrying a suspension trainer. So now I have my favorite trees here, and I just hang it there and I do a quick workout. I'm planning to run around as well. I just need to bring
And I'm
Right.
getting warm a bit. Yeah.
But I was actually cautious about like protein intake and to just have a fully balanced nutritious diet. So
Yeah.
that's how I. So in Portugal for 2 years, I was cooking for sports people.
Yeah.
It's really important for them. They
Yeah.
were always focusing on like protein. But even in a vegan diet, I'm pretty sure you can consume enough protein without
Yeah.
supplement.
And that's just like a whole podcast would be about protein because there's a lot of myths around protein where you need so much protein and actually not that much, but that's another whole topic. Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you in general, oh, we're always interested about health and like taking care of your health and what.
I would say so. Both of my parents are working. They are related somehow to the healthcare industry. I was working in the healthcare industry as well for more than 4 years. Yeah. So
Oh, that's also great for us, for the kids around here to see that, to be able to. That's something we wanted in general, like, the whole idea of the project is to connect the kids, like, to their own bodies, like, on an educational point of view about, they're finding their own calling, their interest, mm, believing in themselves that they can find what they want to learn and they're capable of learning. So that part, but then also, connecting them to their own bodies, um, to know how to feel good when they eat, when they move, when they're in nature, taking care of the land, of the planet, taking care of the animal. Like it's a whole, you know, bundle.
yeah.
Um, so that really fits like um great thing in there. And one interesting thing you really mentioned once to me is how you were working um explain it right, but like reutilizing scraps or
Yes, yes. As a biochemical engineering, after I got my degree, my first workplace um, was in a genetical research laboratory. I was, we were genetically modifying bacteria. It might sound scary for lots of people. It was for good. It was a really green company, and it was a really small laboratory. We were working in a research and development group of scientists, and our goal was to create a bacteria solution that basically revitalize the soil. So now we have lots of problems with overusing soil, like in agriculture,
yeah.
because most farmers are using fertilizers, like artificial fertilizers, and every year they need to use more and more to keep the soil fertile. And after a point, it's going to be completely useless. So we were developing, or we were working on a liquid bacteria solution. You can just spray it on the ground, and it's going to revitalize naturally the soil. And it was working. Or we had different mixes. One was for uh, the overuse of soil, these artificial fertilizers, and the other one he was just breaking down the straws, the leftover straw in the soil. Because sometimes when they just cut the crop, like wheat or corn, the straw stays there, and it's a stubborn thing to break down. And the bacteria solution was just instead of months, it was like a week to
Okay.
break it down.
Like accelerate the whole process. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's also another whole topic, like regenerative farming and how to protect our soils and do different farming, agriculture.
Yeah, I see lots of potential in this place.
Yeah, there's so much space. Everything.
Agriculture
So,
wise.
yeah, people with knowledge and time to do it. But yeah, it's like, um, and just sometimes, working on the soil that's already been very, it's in a harsh situation or state. It takes a while to regenerate into its to a point. But there are some really interesting things that I don't know if you know about food forests, for example. Forests in general. Like it's well there's one actually here. I would love to go one day. The kids visit, and it's not far, it's like a half an hour, 40 minutes from here. It's from someone called Juan Anton. He's been there that 40 years or more now. He just on a very small plot that was like, I think it was an orange field or something like that. So very, like big, dry, and lots of products and fertilizers, and under the 5 centimeters of soil you already have nothing. And it's funny because his neighbors the same, but he just took all those trees out and just planted a forest basically. Like totally mixed and everything is like very dense. Well, not of course it's wet, very covered. So there's no. That's an important part. The soil should not be never be uncovered. That's how it works in forest, for example. So it's a forest, but from mostly from fruit trees. So now he has like it's really little. It's like 1,000 square meters or something like that. In the middle of all those other fields, dry fields, where they still go with the tractors and put. And he has like in there the production he produces there is incredible, and he has it's jungle, like it's huge. Like he has avocado trees that were 30 meters high, full of avocados, and his whole mentality around it is that you do the work initially to regenerate the soil and to plant to very dense, but at some point, like a normal forest, it just sustain itself. And so he has nothing else to do than just collect
Okay.
when he wants,
So,
and because he's not like cleaning, making sure it's he's just leaving it all to itself, and it's amazing. He has a lot of fruit that we thought we could not grow here, and he just go and he collects the fruits
and it's open for public.
yeah, so he makes like tours and things like that, so you can just contact him, and he does a lot of interviews and things like that, and it's just fascinating. So what we can do with just a little, and knowing a bit nature, knowing how it works, and because nature does it by itself,
Yeah.
like it of course it takes time and there are ways to do it, but yeah, that was fascinating for me. But another,
It's always really nice to see these good examples all around the world, which is actually working. I remember I was visiting one uh, hydroponic farm in the Seychelles.
Mhm.
I don't know if you heard about hydroponic.
It sounds good. I can't.
Yeah, I think it's a relatively new system. They use really little water
Mhm.
and basically no soil, or very little soil, but they have this pipe system and everything. It's more like sustainable energy vibes, or it's really, really sustainable water and energy vibes. And they had a farm to table restaurant. I think that can be kitchen wise here. That's like the ultimate goal, farm to table.
Yeah.
Or definitely have
Yeah.
a big crop. And
There you can produce so much, and there are ways to do it also in a way where we can also, yeah, make it more dense, and actually each plant or tree will protect the other one as well, and it grows actually better. And there's so many ways. There's vertical farming, there's like visual force and a lot of different things. So we really also want to use this space we have here to kind of experiment with the things that
I was about to say it's a good place to
yeah,
experiment.
project. Let's see. And then, yeah, last point I want to talk about that also is seems well, it's part of your life, I guess. Music. You mentioned
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Want to share a little bit about that?
Luckily, we have quite a few music
Yeah.
where we start. Yeah.
We saw you liked instruments, just like, okay, we're bringing all the instruments and
Now I do not need to bring my own guitar every day because we have actually do lots of other exotic or less exotic instruments. So yeah, I really like music. I grew up surrounded by music. Both my parents played music, my brothers played music. I was going to music school as well. So it was always part of my life. So if I have some free time, I'm waiting something to get done in the oven, or I'm waiting for the dishes to get dry naturally. I just grab the guitar and play some. It literally feels like
all the kids and the moms or the dads and the teachers sitting around and
so I'm part-time music. I can be part-time music teacher. Yeah. So if anybody has any interest in music, I'm happy to, and not just let them try, but actually show them how to make them sound.
That's been amazing because we had a few and like my own son was also he was since 2 3 years interested in guitar, especially initially. It is on guitar, well, the one we have here now. He was playing, but we like I love music. I also grew up with music. I learned piano, but then I stopped when I was too young, so I don't remember how to play. And I always wanted to get back to it, but never did. So unfortunately, I see like his interest since he's a young child, and we bought him the instrument and everything, and we let him like just freely. He was, playing freely or turning it around and using it as a tambourine or whatever. And but we could never really go further because we're missing the knowledge. And he never wanted initially to go to a lesson. Um, so yeah, we definitely have, and since we brought our piano here as well. I mean, the kids are playing every day.
That is true. That is true. Personally, I'm really happy. It looks like, especially piano is making the kids happy too.
Yeah.
And if they have any question, I'm always available. I cannot work without music. I'm always listening to some
Yeah.
music in the kitchen. If the speaker is not on, usually I play music, so some kind of thing.
Well, that's why I think it's a perfect fit for us here between, for sure, culinary knowledge of vegan cooking, gluten free, and your health conscious person, and the music part. It's just it's perfectly here. And for now, everybody's really love your food. The kids love your food, right? They're always there before the time and like, where is food? When is food coming? So that's a good sign. So yeah, thank you so much for
Thank
that,
you.
for being here and feeding all this little community here
It's
and
all fine.
and for your calm and positive energy. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for letting me be here and play around.
My pleasure. And thank you for being on this podcast. It was really nice.
Thank
And I
you.
hope everybody can see what we have here and how amazing it is. And food is just big. I'm a food lover, so not just me, my husband and my kids, and I think you probably as well.
I
I mean,
think I
the group we probably are. I mean,
have. And hopefully, in the next episode with me, we can talk more about the actual podcast.
yeah, we can go into much more detail. It would be nice at some point to maybe one parent suggested that to make a Barefoot House cooking a book, even
Yeah.
at some point recipe. We didn't mention, but we also do like workshops sometimes with the kids, like cakes or pastries or whatever they want. So yeah, a lot of food involved and just makes the whole day better. Thank you, Adam,
Thank
for your
you.
time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Do 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 do